TA that sits in there with the kids, but the teacher's here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it really
I'm
is
live.
a cool room.
Just the possibilities of what education can be.
I know, right? Well, I'm good just sitting here. Go deal with your kids.
They are all, hang on, wait for it, wait a minute. They are all
I'm
right here.
recording you. I'm recording you without your permission.
She knows.
Right on.
She knows the drill. So everyone, this is Miss Fee. She is from Normal Community and she serves as a Caprice-like character. She's and Miss Fee, please feel free to jump in and give your official title and what you do.
Sure. I'm a high school counselor. We do both social and emotional support. We do class scheduling. We do testing. We do all sorts of things to support students. We spend a lot of times in meetings so that we can determine different kinds of activities that we offer students to help them be successful in class. Yeah.
So one of the things that Miss Fee has an advantage for you guys over others is that she emailed me this week and said she started to read the book.
But
So
very, I have it right here. You can see where my bookmark is. Not very far in the book.
that's okay.
But I have met Sasha, and I have met her friend, and I can't remember her friend's name because she just changed it where I'm at.
Oh, I see.
Yep.
So this is student driven, Miss Fee. So I'm actually gonna step out of the room here in a moment. I'm gonna let who's reading our summary and getting things started. Okay, so Ava here is gonna get things started. She's gonna give you a brief summary of the book insofar as where your role is really important.
Sure.
And then we have book-based questions, and then we've also researched your career a little bit and what you do. And so if we have time, we've got some curiosity questions just in general as well.
Sure.
One of the things you'll have to keep in mind, because this is a virtual conference, is that you might have to speak a little bit louder. And then also allow for response time, because Miss Fee might, depending on what's being received on her end, you want to give her time to respond. Okay, sound good?
Yep.
All right, and then keep that camera steady because we need that footage so that the other classes can watch this later.
Got it. Evan, can you kind of move your Chromebook?
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Miss Fee. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna let the kids take over now.
Great.
Okay.
Eva.
Hi.
How do you know Ava?
She said her name. She said her name. Okay.
Bah.
In class, we're reading a book called 57 Bus by Dr. Slater. It is a true story about two teens, one a 16-year-old African-American boy named Richard, and the other an 18-year-old Asian teen named Sasha. Sasha uses the pronouns they, their, and their. When their paths cross on a bus ride home, both of their lives change forever. Richard sets Sasha's skirt on fire, and they, as in Sasha, suffer from severe second and third-degree burns. They eventually heal, but it took a lot of surgeries and recovery time. Richard was tried as an adult and charged with a hate crime and multiple other offenses. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison and is coming out later this year. His school counselor, Caprice, greatly influenced his life in more positive ways until Richard made an awful mistake. She was helping him stay on track in school, stay out of trouble, and get a good job. Caprice made Richard want to be a better person.
Alright, so I have the first book question. In the book, Richard didn't have that good of a mother figure at home. Caprice was his counselor and Richard was able to talk to her about all of his problems, dreams, fears, etc. Do you represent a mother figure to some of your students who don't have that kind of relationship at home? Explain why or why not.
At times, yes. I think that a school counselor, because we are very compassionate people, and because we care deeply about our students, and because we don't have to give them any kind of discipline, we don't have to give them a grade and things like that. I think that students see us more as helper people, and so it doesn't. So it lends itself well to what Richard is, or what the book is describing as a mother figure. Now, in the past, I've had a student whose mother actually fell down the steps and hit her head so hard on the bottom that she passed away. And in that instance, that student did see me, obviously, as a very strong mother figure, and it's difficult for us as professionals to kind of keep that space between loving your students too much like a mother and letting them be your students. Because of course, as professionals, we also have a home life, you know, and we go home and we spend time with our biological children and our spouses and our family members. But it doesn't take away from the love and the success that we want our students at school to have. So that's one of the things. Another thing, and probably being in a bigger setting than I was in when this other student's mother passed away, it's a little different in that with 400 students on my caseload, it's hard to get to that degree of support for students. But yes, we do talk about things that teachers don't talk about, and we get into situations that probably a lot of other people in the school building don't do. That could be considered, you know, motherly roles.
Alright, I have a second question. So, during Richard's part of the book, Caprice talks about how she feels really connected to her students and always wants them to succeed in life. Certain things that happened to her students made a deep impact on her. Have you ever gone through a challenge when you and your student gone through difficulties together while you were working with them?
Yes. I mean, that happens almost all the time. We, in the recent past, right now I'm working with a student, probably about, maybe 6 months ago, we had a death in our student population. And so I'm working with one of my students right now, dealing with the loss of her friend. And she's having trouble staying in classes and getting information from those classes. She's highly intelligent and a very compassionate, kind person. And she's just really struggling to pay attention when she's in class. And so those are some of those things that we talk through and give different kind of coping skills for her so that she can be successful in her classes as well. Did that answer your question?
Yep, it did.
Okay.
So I have the third book question. Caprice is a high school counselor who tries to help Richard through his struggles. Students obviously trust Caprice with all their secrets and their life stories. How do you get students to trust you and know that you'll listen to them?
So one of the things that I think is really, really important is to connect with students. So I have students typically for 4 years, freshman, junior, sophomore, senior. So I have them for 4 years. So during their freshman year, we have this 15-minute time frame before or after lunch that's called homeroom. Everybody is divided by counselor and then also by grade level. So I have three classes of 30. So I have about 90 freshmen in these homerooms, and I try and go into the homerooms at least every other week so that I can get to know the students. And we do different kinds of activities. I know you guys did some research on school counseling.
Yep.
Right? Being a school counselor. Did you do that through career cruising?
Not that I know of.
No?
No.
We
So you
just
don't use that
looked
program?
up like what
We
they
have this
do.
program called Career Cruising. And that program has obviously a career research, it has college research, it has all these different kinds of components in it. So that's the tool that I teach them to use as a freshman. And that's kind of my method or reasoning for going into the classroom. But more often, I walk around and I talk to the students. And I think once you create that relationship, students are more willing to trust you and to come to you, and when there's a need, to come and see you. I also tell them all the time, I'm your helper person. If you need anything, come to me and I will help you. And I think them over and over again lets them know that that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help and to come in. And they, knowing this, I get a lot of different questions. Some of them I don't know. But I usually know who to go to find the answer if I don't know the answer right away. So I think really building a relationship with the students, I think, is primary in trying to get them to come in and trust you and talk to you and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a student, how do you know what to, like, that's going through something big, like you were just saying, how do you know what to say to them to, like, help them through it?
Yeah, to help them, yeah. I think so. So a lot of times when people come into my room and they're upset and they're crying, I start to cry too because that's just the kind of person I am. Because it hurts me to see them hurting so badly. And one of the first things that I do if they are crying, I ask them if I can hug them because I'm also a very huggy person. And some kids say no, they don't like that touch. But most of the time when we're sad and we're crying, we want someone to feel that with us. And so most of the time, after that, and then I will sit very close to them, usually put my arm around them, and I just let them cry because crying is a great stress reliever. And I let them cry, and then, when you're ready, you have to tell me what's going on. And then they start with little bits, and then by the time we're done, they have the story out. And some of the things that I say is, I will identify their feelings, when they're crying, and they say, for example, my boyfriend just broke up with me. Wow, that really hurts your heart, doesn't it? And that's really hard for you to go through. And then as, after the emotion kind of wears down a little bit, then we have time to talk about what the next steps are. And in this instance, I always remind them, you know what, high school is a time for you to date different people and to see what you like in someone that you're spending a lot of time with, and whether or not that's the type of person that you want to spend more time with. And so there's time to let people, let students have their feelings and feel, because a lot of students feel very strongly. And then there's a time to look at, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to heal? And how are we going to move forward?
Did it take you a while to learn how to, like, work with kids and work with teens?
Yes. I've been doing this for a long, long time. It's much easier now. It's almost just like second nature now. And at the beginning, I think you have friends that are like me. I mean, you go to, you're sad and you go to one of your friends and they just have the right answers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
I
those,
don't
so some of those things are just natural to us. And some of the things, I went to school to be a school counselor, and they taught us different techniques to get people to talk to you and that kind of thing. But like I said before, I think it was to his question, your question about how do you get people to talk to you? And I think it's just a relationship. Once you establish that you are a kind person and that you want nothing but the best for someone, I think they will share with you. And I make mistakes all the time. I say the wrong thing all the time. But when you have that relationship, and when kids are willing to tell you things, they're not perfect either. So they don't expect me to be perfect. And I'm the first one to say, whoops, my bad, and move on to something else.
Okay, so in the book, Richard puts himself into Caprice's program to make himself better, but still.
Wait, I missed that. He did what?
Okay, sorry. I talk fast.
That's okay, honey.
And I mumble, sorry. So in the book.
You're fine. You're absolutely fine.
Yeah, in the book, Richard puts himself into Caprice's program to make himself better, but still falls behind, especially right before the fire. How would you deal with the student trying to better themselves, but it's still failing no matter how hard they try?
Yeah, you know what? That sometimes happens. And it's not so much a school issue as a world issue. You know, like so if a student is working, and goes home and doesn't have a doesn't have light at their home, or doesn't have a place to sleep and sleeping on the floor, or something like that, that impacts whether or not he can be successful at school, he or she, or they can be successful at school. So I think one of the things that we really try to do is look at the barriers, because we only have students for 8 hours a day. And we can definitely put those pieces in place for those 8 hours. But once the 8 hours are done, then what do we do? They leave us and they go elsewhere, and they have to continue those things. But sometimes there's so many social impacts that it doesn't work well. It doesn't work well for students, and they're not being successful as they continue their education. Did that work? Is it working? Is the camera working okay?
Yeah.
Our cameraman just can't hold it up.
Oh.
Hello. I'm the cameraman.
You need a tripod.
Exactly.
Wait, Seth, there's something on the screen. Just hit the cancel button.
It's too bad. You know what? It's too bad that there's not like a recording device on the computer.
That would be
Yeah.
cool.
That'd be handy.
That'd be
Oh, I have screen satisfy on my Chromebook, so
everyone.
Okay.
if Miss Bonner has that, it'd be easy. I know how to work.
Yeah. I'm not very techie, so I was kind of worried about hooking up with you guys.
My brother and I are techies.
Oh, awesome!
He's more
Well,
of a
I'm gonna
techie than
call if I
me.
need some help.
My brother's more of a techie than me.
Really?
Yeah.
You probably hang out with him a bit and pick it up, right?
More or less. I forget things easily though.
In the book,
And
Caprice has
that
to deal. In the book, Caprice has to deal with students who are emotionally unstable. How do you get students to calm down if they are upset or frustrated?
Kind of like I said before, I let them be upset for a while, because you can't if you consider yourself and think about a time that you were really, let's say, angry at your parents. Okay, you're really mad, and you like yell at them, and you might throw things, and you go in your room and you slam the door and you start crying because you're so mad. And how could they do this to you? And why aren't they letting you do these things? And that kind of thing. How long does that last?
Quite a
the
while.
kicking
5
and the
minutes.
pounding and yeah,
I'm
about
getting
5 minutes,
upset.
because
With
you don't
me,
have the
it lasts
energy
a
to
while.
go for hours. I mean, you can't stay at that really high emotional state for a long time. 5 minutes is probably about the longest. Of course, to us, it feels like 5 hours, and to us watching, it feels like 5 hours, but you can't maintain that. So a lot of times what I do, as long as the student is being safe and not hurting themselves and not hurting other people, I just let them be mad. I let them cry. I let them curse. I let them do whatever they need to do to come down. And once you're down here, then we can talk about it. Because when you're up here and you're emotional and you're emoting all over the place and you're yelling and you're screaming and you're crying, you're not hearing what I say. You just want to feel. You feel all those things, and you're having this storm inside yourself. And so once the storm calms down, then we can go out in the rain. But when it's lightning and hailing and blowing and all that kind of stuff, you're not going to get anywhere if you go outside, because the hurricane's going on. So if we wait until the hurricane subsides and it's just raining, those feelings aren't going to go away like that. They're going to stay with you, and you might be mad at your parents for all night, all the next day, however long. But it doesn't mean that you can't go out in the rain. You can't go and interact with them and try to mend that relationship. So So there's a lot of strong feelings. And like I said, what I do is I just wait for them, be a little bit more peaceful, and then work. And then work with finding next steps for the students. Does that make sense? Did I answer
Oh,
that
yeah.
question? Okay.
It's very inspirational.
In the book, Richard has a challenging home life. If you had a student, how would you help them with the problems you are facing outside the classroom?
Yeah, see, that's really hard. And it's a little bit easier in the high school than it is in the elementary schools. Because the elementary schools, the children, you know, when they go home, they come back the next day and they have the same kinds of things that were going on the day before because they go home to that home life. In high school, we're a little bit more independent and we're a little bit more able to make our own choices, and we start growing away from our parents. And so, you know, your home is your home. That's where you live and that's where you sleep. And so when students have issues at home, we want them to be safe, we want them to be fed, we want them to be sheltered. And so as long as we have those three things taken care of, those are the first three things we need to take care of. And then beyond that, then we want to provide other kinds of supports. So depending upon what's happening at home, we talk about different options that they have in order to be successful and to manage through those pathways. Was there an example in the book of what Richard was going through at home that you can share with me?
He lived in a rough neighborhood.
He lived in a rough neighborhood, and he didn't like. His mom had him when she was really young, and she was always working. So like, yeah, and then
he didn't have a lot of support at home, and he didn't have a lot of supervision at home. So he was pretty much on his own.
Yeah.
Also, his mother had to look after his like little cousins after their mother passed away. So even a few years before the book starts, he didn't get as much attention as he would have if his mom was just working all the time.
And his
Sure.
mom,
Yeah.
she tried to be around, but like she just always couldn't, because she had to work all the time just to try and support everyone. So
Right. And this happens a lot in our immigrant families, where when they come to the United States, they don't have those kinds of supports, and they don't have any money because they have spent all their money to come to America. And so the parents a lot of times are working 2 and 3 jobs, so there's no one at home to take care of the kids. And typically the oldest, which would be Richard, end up cooking for the children, watching the children, and they're put in a role of being the parent, making sure the kids are taken care of. And if you don't have parents that have a strong support of education and think that education is the way out of the current situation, you're not gonna have anyone tell you, hey, do your homework. Hey, you need to get ready for school. Hey, there's an essay coming up next week. Why don't you start that now? How many of your parents do this?
I don't really do my homework at home.
The support that you have, that obviously Richard doesn't get that because his mom is just trying to keep him safe, sheltered, and fed. And those are basic human needs. And so it's really important that we take that into consideration when you're, even for you guys, when you are talking to other people. Not all of your peers have parents that are doing the same thing that your parents are. We all do it a little bit differently. And so compassion and kindness to those students that don't have the same kinds of supports that you have is really necessary, because they go through a lot more than some of you guys do.
I have my own question, but you
No, you're
guys
supposed to
decide.
read one.
no, you have to read the one on paper.
No, I don't have my Chromebook, so
Here, read it off mine.
no. I'm doing my question that I came up with.
Okay, go ahead.
How do
Who's
you
the
help?
cameraman?
Yeah.
How do you help a kid with a mental disability or more?
A mental disability or more, depending upon what kind of diagnosis or what kind of evaluation they've had. We have a lot of different kinds of supports to help students. We have, if it's an emotional issue, we have a lot of counselors from outside that come in, because obviously with 400 students, I can't give social emotional counseling to a student on a regular basis. So we bring someone in that can provide that opportunity to students. For students that have learning disabilities or are on the spectrum or have behavior issues, we have programs for that with specially trained faculty members that can help them manage through the educational process, and then also be able to find ways to be successful. They are taught skills, because we are all given a hand of cards, and some people have cards in there that in their hand that we just have to deal with. And if learning disability is one of the cards in my hand, I have to figure out how to play the game, so to speak, with that card in my hand. Okay, because I can't give that to somebody else. It's mine forever. Okay, just like one of my cards is I'm pretty tall. And so I always have that tall card in my hand. Okay, and I'm a super slow reader. I always have that card in my hand. Okay, and so what do I do about being a tall person? I have a really hard time finding pants. Okay? Because my legs are super long. What do I do about having the slow reader card in my hand? I have to plan for more time to read. Okay? And it doesn't matter how long I practice, I still am a very slow reader. That's probably why I'm still at the beginning of the book. Okay? And so you just make plans for those diagnoses or disabilities. I can't remember what he called the situation.
Mental disability.
I'm sorry?
Mental disability, because I have a few.
Right. So you just make plans for that. We are all different. Okay? I can speak Spanish. Can any of you speak Spanish?
No.
Sí.
Barely.
That's
No,
one of the
you
only words I can say. Leche blanco.
I mean, I'm trying to learn Japanese, but
I can speak a little bit of German,
Getting
French.
manual in here. He'll know.
Yeah. And so
Hello.
so using a different language is one of the cards that also is in my hand. Okay? But sometimes when I speak, nobody understands what I'm saying except the person that I'm talking to. So it just depends upon what cards do you have in your hand and how are you going to use them. Okay? If I don't use my Spanish, you know what happens to it, because I'm not a native speaker? It goes away. Because I have to practice it in order for it to come out of my mouth like I know what I'm talking about. So it's just one of those things, those disabilities and those struggles that we all have struggles. They're just different struggles, and they're different degrees of struggle.
Okay, so Seth kind of asked more of a career-based question, but I'm gonna go back and answer or read the last book-based question.
Answer.
So,
Sure.
on the day of Richard's arrest, he goes to Caprice's office before he is taken away, and leaves Caprice left in disbelief. Can you talk about a time where a student has left you in disbelief?
It's quite unsettling to have a student taken away by the police or even in the ambulance. And also in my situation, we have 2,200 students. So with 2,200 students, it probably, every once in a while we get a student who is suicidal and who doesn't want to be here anymore, doesn't care that other people are are wanting to support them and things like that. And sometimes we have to call people outside of the school to come and evaluate a student. And sometimes those students are taken to a support hospital or someplace where they can obtain more support. And when a student like that, when a student has that kind of a situation, we become, of course, very worried. And what's going to happen? Are they going to be safe tonight? What if they're gone for a week? How are we going to check in on them? And different things like that. Because when students are taken away from us, we don't have that form of communication anymore. We can't see them on a regular basis, and we can't talk to them. So it's very unsettling, and it's really, really hard.
Okay, so now we're gonna move into some more career-based questions.
Sure.
Were you always interested in becoming a counselor, or did a person or event in your life inspire you to do so?
I was not very good at doing research on careers, and when I went to college, I decided that I wanted to travel because I love to see the world and I love different cultures and things like that. So I thought that the best way for me to travel was to get another language. And so I started, so my undergraduate degree is in Spanish. And like I told you, I speak Spanish. And when I was in college, I did a lot of traveling. I did my student teaching in Mexico City. I did an exchange program to southern New Mexico and learned Spanish and those kinds of things. Well, then when I graduated, it was kind of like I started working at Citibank. Do you know what Citibank is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Cards. And so I would sit in a great big huge room with computers talking on the phone all day.
Yeah.
And about one time every 2 weeks, I would get a customer calling me in Spanish. And that's how I was using my Spanish. And then after about 4 or 5 months of that, it was like, yeah, this isn't working for me. So I had my teaching degree, so I decided to try teaching Spanish. And so I taught Spanish for 5 years. And while I was in the schools, I would see the counselor. And the counselors that I had, I'm not sure were very good counselors because every time in the morning when I would walk by their office, they were reading the paper. And in the afternoon when I would walk by their office, they would be having a snack. And so I didn't think that they were doing a very good job because I rarely saw them with students. I rarely saw them doing anything professional. I only saw them doing things that didn't involve students. So I thought in my head, wow, I can be better than that. I can work with kids better than than the examples that I've seen. And so I went back to school and I was trained, and that is how I became a school counselor because I wanted to do a better job than the job that I had seen done. So I didn't do any research. It's what I do find interesting about my career though is that counselors are very similar to each other. We all have very similar traits in that we love to talk to kids. We are helper people. We are compassionate. We cry all the time, and we are just kind of the same kind of person, but in different bodies and different life experiences.
I have another career-based question. How do you come up with ideas to help your students?
Really, as far as ideas to help kids, I kind of let that. It depends upon what the student needs are. A lot of times, I like for the students to come up with their own ideas. And it'd be
Okay.
You're muted.
Yeah, we're
Yeah, I think
breaking up.
I can't
We
hear
can't
you.
hear you. Can you hear us?
Is this better?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Can you repeat
Okay,
what
I
you just
probably
said?
moved too far away from the microphone. Now I've forgotten. Remind me what we're talking about.
How do you come up with ideas to help your students?
Oh, okay. Right, ideas. So the first thing that I like to do is let the kids come up with the ideas themselves. And a lot of times we'll brainstorm. And I ask a lot of questions like, what would your friends do? Would that work for you? What do you think of? And then I give us a statement. Would that work for you? A lot of conversations, not a lot. Some of the conversations that I have deal with students and teachers, and how they're, the teacher's not understanding, the teacher isn't providing enough support, things like that. And so a lot of times it's just giving students words to use in another situation. So sometimes we even do like, would it let me be the teacher and you, or let me be you and you be the teacher, because I don't know the teacher, how would she respond? And then I start saying things that the student has just shared with me. Like, for example, if the student has said, this teacher, it won't, I'm going through all this stuff with my friend and she won't just let me sit there and be peaceful. I'm not disrupting, but she's not understanding what the situation is. And so I say, okay, you be Mrs. Smith. I'm going to be you. Okay. And these are some of the words you could say to Mrs. Smith. Mrs. Smith, I'm having this real hard time. Would it be okay if I just sit here at my desk and listen to you while I'm doodling on this paper? And then I say to the student, what would Mrs. Smith say? You say what Mrs. Smith would say. And usually the students say, no, you can't draw on that paper, and be really angry because they feel like Mrs. Smith is really mad at them and is very angry. And so, so then I come back and say, well, Mrs. Smith, I understand you don't like that. So how would it work if I take my pencil and twirl it? You know how some kids can twirl their pencils?
Yeah.
You know how that,
Yeah.
what if I just sit and twirl my pencil when I am feeling anxious? What would Mrs. Smith say? And they would say, no, I don't want those fidgets in my classroom. And I said, okay. And then we try things. And then, just like, that emotion that's always up here, and then after 5 minutes, it kind of comes down. So then they start running out of Mrs. Smith being angry, and then they finally come around. So I'm always giving them ideas to share with the teacher. And then they finally come around with, well, I've got all these ideas that I can try with Mrs. Smith, so I'm going to go out.
What is the typical day for a counselor, usually?
Well, usually we start with an interview with 8th graders.
What's she doing right now?
Every single day is very, very different. So it just depends upon what the day brings. So today of course I'm starting with you, and then the rest of my calendar actually is on my other computer. So I have a meeting with an outside counselor at 10, as well as a meeting with a student and a teacher. I have two meetings with students. Remember that 15-minute homeroom that I was talking about?
Yeah.
I have those. I have a meeting with a parent, and I have to write a letter of recommendation for a student to get into college. So that's what I have on my calendar today. And so also I am working with some band parents because they're having an event here on the weekend. So I'm trying to get TVs hooked up so that they can stream the band competition. and as well as I need to talk to my principal about a policy change, and maybe have lunch.
You're a busy bee, aren't you?
All right, I'm gonna sneak in
Oh,
here.
busy. But every day, hi Sarah.
Hi.
Miss Bonner.
Miss
This
Fee,
day is a little different.
hopefully you guys are able to ask all your book-based questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so these
One
kids
more
have to.
question.
No.
You guys have to head on back in so you can get your stuff. The bell's about ready to ring. We appreciate your time, Miss Fee. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As they say in Germany, auf Wiedersehen.
I'm reading the name.
That's German for goodbye.
You guys can leave these chairs in here 'cause
I
we've got
realize
somebody
that.
else. All right, go ahead and check that out for me, please.
Bye.
Joan, thanks again. We appreciate your